find such a love at our age. Whoever thought we could dance on a
Welcome to Couples Therapy in 7 Words. I'm your co-host, Judy Alexander, and I'm here with my husband, Dr. Bruce Chalmer.
Hello, Judy. Hello, viewers and listeners. Judy, what's today's topic?
Creating a Story of Us, an interview with Dr. Penny Goldmuntz and Rabbi Michael Trachtman.
We just finished that interview. Fascinating folks.
Mm-hmm.
Really interesting.
Yeah,
really fun.
very
Did
interesting.
a little bit of Jewish nerding out there.
Yeah, well,
Couldn't resist. You know.
he's a rabbi.
He's a
I'm
rabbi.
Jewish educator.
You're a Jewish
you're
educator.
a-
I'm.
you're
You
the-
know. I do a lot of studying. But
yeah,
you know,
well.
I'm not a rabbi, but I play one on television.
Yes, you do.
know. Not really.
Might as well be one.
Not
and a
really.
cantor.
Not really.
Yeah, well.
In any case, it was a really interesting interview, and it was fun, of course, for me also, especially to look at the overlap of my favorite ideas about couples with theirs, which there was a lot of overlap.
A lot of overlap.
And they
there,
also
I
have some
noticed.
really neat stuff that I don't tend to talk about, which is why it's fun to have them on.
Yeah.
So do check that out, and you can check out, or we'll put in the show notes for this episode, the information about how to get in touch with them if you're interested in what they have to offer. Before we do that, just putting in a word for, well, a few things.
Okay.
I really want to put in a big word about my video courses that I'm working on yet another one now as we speak.
Oh, nice.
A video course, I already have them out on the Passion Paradox
Mm-hmm.
and on betrayal and forgiveness. And I have one out about discernment, which is to say, you know, if you're in that kind of awful situation about not being sure if you're going to stay together or not, the discernment video, which is that course is somewhat shorter than the other ones. It's very focused on getting you to a decision. And so I do invite people to do that. And you can find out information about all of that on my website, brucechalmer.com.
Right.
I will make sure there's a link also clearly on our podcast website, which is
ctin7.com.
yes. If you happen to be watching this, you'll see it floating above our head. Actually, I don't think I see it. No, I don't think I have that on anymore. Anyway, ctin7, the number 7.com is our podcast
Couples
website.
Therapy in 7. That'll come up too. But
Yep, Couples Therapy in 7 Words is our
but
podcast.
CT in 7 is a lot easier, shorter to type in.
Exactly. So do check that out, and of course, people should get a hold of your book.
Oh,
which
yes, they should.
you can
Yes, they should.
Do a little show and tell here.
That book that couples love to read together. It's called The Blue Tent, Erotic Tales from the Bible. And I'm told it's really good bedtime reading between couples. And so if you haven't read it, it's available in paperback, on Kindle, also the audio.
The audio book where Judy was the narrator.
Yes, you get to
Beautifully.
hear me.
And you do, and that's, I'll just say that's a treat all by itself. But yeah, and you know, here we are doing a episode about creating a story of us, and then part of what you'll see when you hear the interview, part of what they talk about are these lovely practices to sort of join together in the midst, like they talk about 10-minute dates. There's a little teaser for you.
I even have an app for that.
They have an app for that. Check that out. But your book is an example of the sort of thing a couple can do to enhance that connection.
That's
because
right.
it's really sexy
And
material.
they're short
of course.
stories. There's 10 short stories. So if you want to go on a 10-minute date and you can just read one of these wonderful stories right from the Bible, you know, that's got all those characters, Adam and Eve.
I will
Isaac
note
and
that
Rebecca.
that it is their short stories for a
Yeah.
10-minute date. That 10-minute date, if you use one of those stories, just for many folks might lead to some additional activity, but we'll leave it there. That's
Well,
okay.
hopefully erotica does.
Erotica does tend to have that effect. At least that's its intended effect.
That's right.
So it is quite lovely. So having said all that, let's get on with our interview. We'll see you on the other side.
Our guests today are Dr. Penny Goldmuntz and Rabbi Michael Trachtman. Rabbi Michael Trachtman and Dr. Penelope Goldmuntz are a married team who help couples transform good relationships into extraordinary ones. Blending psychology, sacred ceremony, and experiential practice, they guide couples to reconnect, rekindle romance, and co-author a powerful story of us. They are known for creating safe, heart-opening spaces where real healing and lasting intimacy become possible. Penny and Michael, Welcome to Couples Therapy in 7 Words.
Hi, welcome. We're
Hey.
glad to be here.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. So we always like to ask our guests, how did you get into the work you do? Tell us something about your own journeys.
Hear you.
You can start.
Okay. So I think what happened was, Penny and I have been together now 25 years. And but when COVID happened and we were stuck here together, sort of in the pressure cooker of, a single home, being with each other all the time. And actually we had two other people who were living with us at the time, one of them by accident. They came to stay for a week and ended up staying a year and a half because of COVID.
Oh boy.
But anyways, so that pressure, and we were, to a degree at each other's throat, and I was feeling disrespected, and Penny felt unseen and not considered, and all that. And to the degree that both of us were like, if this is what our relationship is going to be, we're not staying, kind of thing. But we also know that COVID was a strong, strong factor in it. And so we went to a ceremony that a friend of ours was leading up in New Hampshire. And in that ceremony, we were had the kind of heart-to-heart conversations that were like special, you know. And in that conversation, Penny was sharing her insights, her breakthroughs, how she wanted to shift in order to make this work. And I'll let her talk about a little about that. And I told her, that if that happens, then I would automatically respond to it. Like I wouldn't even have to think. Like if she shifted those things, that would be automatic response on my part. And that's what happened. And like literally the next night I proposed to her. It was a 2-night ceremony.
Wow.
So the next night I said, okay, Penny, I trust you and believe you that you actually are willing to take on these set of attitudes, and I'm willing to also. And would you marry me? And she said yes. And a few months later we were married. So after 20 some, no, I think it was 19 and a half years at the time, we got engaged and got married. So when we saw the magic of ceremony, as well as the magic of some kinds of conversation, we said, we wonder if we can replicate this for others. And so we started replicating it for others, and others were like, oh my God, wow, we didn't, like, one couple said, we've been together 28 years, I think, this particular couple, and this has been the most amazing weekend ever in our entire relationship, other than the weekend we got married.
Mm.
So like in 28 years. So far, and every couple said the same. And it's like, so that's how it started and how we knew that our process. And then we started developing it as a methodology, and specifically around the story of us, because as a rabbi, I've always believed that what makes human beings special compared to, let's say, the animal kingdom is not the opposing thumb, even though that's what we learned in elementary school, and it's not our high IQ compared to mammals. What's really is that human beings are fundamentally story living creatures.
Homo narrativus, I think I've heard
Exactly.
it
I like that.
expressed.
You
Yes.
love that word. Exactly.
Yeah.
And but most people are living at the effect of the story that they've been given, or that the culture or the norms or their beliefs or whatever lead them. So they're not the authors of their own story, they're actors in their own story. And we kind of started saying, well, what if we start being, for me, I'm a romantic at heart and a mystic at heart, and Penny is a romantic at heart and maybe a mystic, but so let's be the authors of our own story, of our own romance, so that the romance we're doing is not an autobiography written after the fact, but it's written during and while.
So, gee, Penny, well, tell us about your story.
Well, the shift that happened for me was during COVID. Was I found myself in that negative feedback loop of complaint and why aren't you doing things this way, and why aren't you treating me that way? And then it brilliantly dawned on me, like, wow, okay, if coming at it from that way, no wonder he's not responding very well. So how about if I shift it to, who do I need to be for him to be who I want him to be? And once I got that shift, then it was easy. Then it was like, oh, I can invite in the person that I want to have show up, and then he'll show up that way. And
Well,
when
if
that
he's
fits
there.
if he's
Right,
there, and
right.
he
And you
would
were
be
fortunate
needed.
that he is.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. So I had a good partner for that who was
Yeah.
quite primed to be able to respond to a shift in how we were being, and that just put us on a positive feedback loop that we've been able to sustain. And I think the other thing that happened was that during COVID, I was just aware of how much tension and fear was coming into my body and my being, and I started looking for ways, practices that were going to shift that into a more relaxed, grounded, abundant kind of state of mind. So I started developing these little, what I call mini practices, moments of beauty and awe. And they started shifting my nervous system and having me just be more relaxed and not get triggered so easily and not be afraid. And then that makes for more positive in the relationship. But we started developing in our relationship work and between us mini practices that couples can do together that bring moments of connection. And that's been one of the core things that we do. All the way from, I might just stop and instead of like passing by and giving him a kiss on the run, I'll stop and we'll make eye contact and have a nice long kiss and really look in each other's eyes and just feel one another being in our relationship. And just those mini practices done on a regular basis really bring you back into that intimacy that you talk about in your book, Bruce. We got the stability pretty well, but the intimacy piece needs these practices that take us out of not paying attention to one another or taking, being unconscious into a more conscious relationship and connection.
So let me get this straight. Before COVID, you were like the Adelaide and Nathan Detroit, and in that you were together like forever.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And then he got off at Saratoga and wouldn't put the ring on the finger. Is that it? So now,
Yeah, we had both been married before, and I think that
uh-huh.
neither one of us, we kind of felt like we're doing great. We don't need to get married. But somehow that shifted, and it's really interesting because I think that what happened for both of us, it surprised us after being together for almost 20 years before we got married again, was how much marriage actually deepened our relationship.
Mhm.
I am often noting that with couples I work with. Sometimes I'll see it from the other perspective, which is the couples who get married without thinking about it much, and then
Mhm.
come to discover, oh my God, it actually means a lot more than we thought it did.
Right.
And of course, then there's the other way around too. It's the people who don't realize how much it's going to make a difference, and then realize they want to get married. They
So
choose.
professionally, what were you each doing prior to COVID or before you wrote this book? What were your roles there?
Well, I mean, I'm an ordained rabbi. My rabbinical training started when I was 3 years old, no exaggeration, because
Uh,
Well,
I come from a lineage. My dad's a rabbi, his dad's a rabbi. There are streets named for some of my ancestors in Jerusalem and near
uh,
in Jerusalem, the city, right?
mhm,
So I come from a very old lineage, and I was homeschooled before homeschooling was a thing,
mm-hmm.
to be taught in this methodology. So I've always just been a really, really, I guess, really good analyst, understander, empathy, compassion, philosophy, psychology, mysticism, like all put together. For many years, I made money in the computer world because I was training. I worked in a lot of corporations from one company to another, training their people, both in tech and in leadership and in system design and all kinds of stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. And then I was really creative and I would invent things and stuff like that. And then at some point I stopped doing that, and Penny and I started creating a community here in the Boston area.
mm,
And so for, I don't know, the 5, 7 years before we got married, we were busy building a personal growth community that was not couple specific. It was, all kinds of people for everything. And Penny's a trauma therapist, so we had that going. I'm very
Okay.
intuitive, so even though I don't have formal training, I see things that people go like, "Oh, wow, that's true." Again, my rabbinical training made me super perceptive, and Penny's super
Mm-hmm.
perceptive, but very different. And then after a while, we said, "Oh, wow, we're having this impact on couples, so let's do both areas of work." And we call the individual work, we call that inner alchemy, and the couples work, we call that relationship alchemy.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you had some involvement with couples prior to this.
Yeah, and I've done family therapy and couples therapy for 40 years
Hmm.
in my private practice. So I had a lot of experience, but it was much more it wasn't it wasn't coming from my own felt sense of the things that really worked in the
Mhm.
way it was more like taking on other models and just traditional psychotherapy with couples kind of work. So it's kind of evolved into a more personal methodology based on the work that we do and our own experience with one another
Mm.
and
And what
working.
do you call it, the work that you're doing now with couples?
Relationship
Relationship alchemy.
alchemy.
Yeah.
Relationship alchemy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I love the word alchemy
Uh-huh.
because it's magical. It's the
Hmm.
transforming of lead to gold or whatever it is, right? And I think people, yet it's a word that people can feel somatically. They can envision themselves being alchemized. So it's
Hmm.
not just something to look at. Like if I would call it shamanic something, it gets externalizing for them. They don't think of themselves as a shaman. But if you think of people can think of themselves as undergoing alchemy. And so, and we like to name things in ways that just hearing the name of it gives people a taste of the experience of what it's
Hmm.
about.
It's yeah, I haven't practiced this for a while, but I also did a lot of trauma work earlier in my career. And one of the things, in addition to EMDR, I also got trained in clinical hypnosis. And certainly the names you use for things, hypnosis is all about that. It's
Right.
about, that sort of direct line to your unconscious that listens, but with very different, much more literal kinds of ears. So yeah, you hear relationship alchemy, and regardless of how one is interpreting that sort of cognitively, my gut is saying, "Ooh, transformation." Just I can
Right. And
see why
safe.
that's a
And
powerful term.
safe. It's almost safe
Hmm.
or friendly. What's the name of the guy in Hogwarts who sold wands? And so he had a certain temperament that made people cozy, I think. So,
Ah,
so that's the idea is to make it approachable. It's miraculous and magical, but on the other hand, approachable and heart-centered.
mm,
So a couple comes to you and they say we want to undergo this relationship alchemy process. Is it a two on two, or is it a group thing? How does it work?
Well, we've done it in several different ways at this point, but we started by having a weekend retreat, and it would be with 6 or 7 couples maximum. So it was a small group setting, and each couple, the work that they did that weekend was in with their partner alone. Um, and we started off with bringing people into the setting. We kind of create the safety and the ground rules and everything. But after that, we move them into an exercise in which we kind of take them out of their ordinary life, and we do something called the Art of Adoration Puja, and in which there's all brass bells and roses and incense, and it really puts them into another state of giving and receiving and adoring one another. And it snaps them kind of out of their normal way of being and into a way of seeing one another with those fresh eyes again of like, oh, this is the person I fell in love with so many years ago. Oh, I haven't experienced that kind of being seen and received and given to in a long time. And it just opens up the gates of hope and the longing that's been sitting there for so long. And then throughout the weekend, we can dive then into the things that they haven't been talking about, the conflicts or tensions that need unraveling with exercises. And then we do more of bringing them together with the story of us and what it is that they want to create and so on. It's like we take them through a journey through the course of the weekend until at the end, on the last day, they've rewritten, they write letters to one another that they'll get in 3 months, and then they do a little like renewing their vows ceremony in front of the group, each couple, in which I had like every man in the weekend cries through it. It's so
It's
beautiful.
that the women cry, we know, but all the men are crying too. It's pretty neat.
Uh-huh.
uh-huh.
Yeah.
Wow. It's interesting when you were describing those little practices of awe, and I was thinking like 100 brachas a day. That's
Exactly. Exactly.
there's a big, and for those of our listeners who aren't Jewish, 100 blessings a day, which is it's kind of the minimum daily requirement. And if one is observant of praying 3 times a day in Jewish tradition, you've got it easily. because
Yeah.
the prayers themselves have 60 or 70 right from the get-go, and then you
Exactly.
say some blessings when you eat and after you eat and all that kind of thing. So it's actually literally so. But I was thinking that when you were saying, yeah, these little practices that will give you a moment to pause, step outside whatever it is you were obsessed with, and actually be intimate in that moment, perhaps with your partner, or perhaps with God or the world or something. I am so on that note, tell us about some of the practices that you suggest for people.
Yeah,
You want me?
sure, you can definitely.
So,
We'll go
you
back
know,
to
so
that.
first of all, I think I'm sure that the research shows that if you kiss, I forget for how many seconds, I think 10 seconds, it causes oxytocin to actually
Yeah,
come into your system. So
yeah,
just to have, or hugs that I forgot, 20
20 seconds.
seconds or something.
yeah.
So to really encourage people to have these longer kisses. And I also like when you kiss someone, your partner, almost before you kiss them, like to look in their eyes. Because I find so many people kiss and they never even connected first,
Hmm.
because it's so habitual to kiss. And so look in each other's eyes, connect, maybe smile,
Yeah.
and then flow into the kiss and have it a long kiss, maybe a hug. So that really kind of goes into your body as a feeling that then can last for a while.
And I think that in all of them, to slow down, to pause, to breathe, to
Hmm.
allow yourself to feel in your body. I have people imagine, for me, I imagine in these moments, like feeling almost a showering of the love rushing through my body and nourishing every
Yeah,
cell in
every
me
sound.
so that it
Yeah.
becomes very somatic and anchored in the body. I find that when I am learning anything, if I when I have it in my body, then I can own it. If it's just up
Hmm.
in my head, it's kind of
Right.
nice, but it's not really mine
It
yet.
vibrates, at least for me, it feels
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
a good
Hmm.
vibration. And then
You know,
another thing,
well, I
yeah,
was just going to say, you're describing couples who are willing to do that.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So I am curious, is there, because you're talking about relationship alchemy for couples that have felt, yeah, there's something missing, kind of your own stories you're describing. There was irritation, there were things missing. Absent, it sounds like absent from your story and absent from many couple story, indeed, there hasn't been betrayal or things like that, or there hasn't
right.
been sort of potential deal breakers or things of that sort. I'm curious because a lot of the folks I work with are very similar to the couples you're talking about, but then I would say mostly aren't. Mostly they're coming to see me. They're more desperate than that.
Yeah.
They're not sure they can stand each other. They want to. They want, usually to come to see me, they want to be with each other, but they don't necessarily want to. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
So
And
I'm
I
curious
would
about
say
that.
that with the people that we're dealing with are not quite at that point yet. So we don't that or we do more individual work with those people. If
Mm,
there's more like they're on the edge of are we really going to make it, then we would start with one-on-one work with them and not throw them into this right away. The people that we're seeing are more like, well, I kind of have one foot in, one foot out, but I know I really love this person, or we're more like roommates and
mhm.
we haven't, we've lost some of the spark, but we're really, I know this is like my best friend and I want to keep being with them.
Yeah.
Or I really love this person. There's not a question that we love each other, but she's so anxious and there's been all this, mental health problems and social anxiety. And so I feel like I have to take care of her. So I can't name any of my own needs because that might be overwhelming to her. So those things have gotten in the way and created more space than they want to have. And they've
Mm.
tried things and nothing's really changed. And so they're they are coming. We're in that respect, the people that we work with in the weekend aren't coming on the edge of are we going to stay together or not?
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah. They want to make things better. They want to
yeah,
feel
Now,
that
but I,
yeah,
I
strength.
would add something to a few things to what Penny says, but one specifically. So we've had couples where I wouldn't say they were fighting all the time, but I would say is typically the wife was feeling unmet. And she
Mm,
was feeling, well, maybe I've outgrown him, maybe I'm more spiritual than him, maybe, he's more committed to his hobbies than to us, or whatever it is, or he's too depressed, whatever it is, right? And then they would come to one of our ceremonies that was not a couple ceremony, just a regular ceremony where everybody comes with their own intention of what they're working on. And we put them in an altered state and things like that. And then what happened was for a few of these women, they would come out the next day and say, oh my God, I have an amazing man and I forgot.
mm, Mm-hmm.
I have an amazing man, and what am I thinking?
Yeah.
So once that switch, and it's more often in the women than the men, I think the women are so inherently more romantic and more disappointed about lack of romance. As a rule, obviously, not everybody, but that's happened often enough that the women then switch to, oh my God, I really love my husband. He's truly an amazing man, person. Now what? Okay. And then we can do the relationship alchemy work with them
Yeah.
as a couple. And then sometimes we'll then do one-on-one work with them in which the question becomes, what is your biggest challenge as a couple? And it can be different things, but one of the most common is that she is not feeling heard,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, he listens, maybe he can repeat what she said, but not really heard,
Right.
right? So we'll spend some time with them teaching him what it means to hear her. And because he really ultimately wants to make it work, he wants to hear her, even though he doesn't have that skill because maybe he's in his head all the time. So to him, listening means being able to repeat the words, not that it impacts your behavior or your affect or your. So once we can get through to him and then give them practices to practice that, then that goes. Then now all of a sudden she's feeling, oh, my core need is met. And then once she has this core need is met and she's in love with him, then we can go to him and say, okay, great. Now you have a wife who loves you and who's feeling heard by you and is willing to, be generous with you. What do you need now? So we can kind of unravel it one core need at a time
Mm-hmm.
to kind of, sort of like, ratchet them up
Mm-hmm.
in that sense of connection.
Yeah.
And I think for me, one of the best things of it is that because especially the first group that we did that came to the first weekend, which is 2.5 years ago, um, the transformation that these couples made was sticking 3 months later, 6 months later, a year later, still a year and a half after,
Yeah,
2 years later,
yeah.
the couples are still finding that that one first weekend has changed everything in their relationship, and the little practices, those moments that we've taught them, have been an anchor to keep that going and to keep the opening. I think the other really cool thing is, like, when you work with an individual, you give them practices, they go home, but they don't have somebody who's been through the experience with them, and they don't have somebody to practice with.
Yeah.
That's a big difference when we're working with couples. It's a real advantage that you've been through this experience together, had these practices together, and then you can do them together, have the ritual, have the.
And so an
So what
example
kind
of
of
what we
practices do you give them to do when they go home?
Yeah, so I'll give you one, and that answers the question you asked before. Is one practice is like every so often, and Penny and I do this all the time, where we'll take two tea light candles, and each one will hold one. The other person will light it and say something they appreciate, but not from a list, but what is in this moment that
Mm-hmm.
you're grateful for about your partner, or that you see in your partner that inspires you, or something like that. And then sit with that, allow that to breathe in our bodies, and then go the other direction. And then put those two candles on a mini altar or on, wherever, on a table, wherever, somewhere, sort of as a living light uh, relationship. So that's a practice that we do with them and that we do with each other. And it's easy to do, it's just a bunch of tea lights, and you can do it anywhere. But by ritualizing presence and complimenting and being with and appreciation and adding the candle ritual to it kind of elevates it.
I'm curious in that context, you're talking about things that indeed I can see they would have a lasting effect because they're there. And what you were saying about the advantage of the couple being there, they're both there because they're both willing to be there. Well, that's a huge
Right.
thing. I am
Yeah.
curious, what's your theory as to why passion goes away in the first place? Why doesn't that last? It feels good. So why don't people maintain it? I mean, I have, of course, my pet theories about that, but I'm most curious about other people. So what are your
Yeah.
thoughts about that?
Seriously.
Well, I think that for one, there's a familiarity and almost like a expectation of how things are going to go, and people don't put the attention to how do I keep this fresh and alive and different, rather than like well, we get into bed and this is going to happen and I do this and then he does that and then I do this and then we do that and it kind of gets like old. So
Routine.
routine, right? And I always tell people, one, if you can approach one another in your time together in a date night. I actually love scheduling date night so that we like they don't just get lost or like, oh, I don't feel like it tonight, and then it's the next day and the next day and the next day. Put it on the calendar, it really is helpful. And go into it without any big expectation about what the outcome is going to, where will you get to, and allow yourself to start being in just the moment to moment unfolding of the energy between the two of you. And I find that then that keeps things very fresh and new because you're just tracking, where is the energy taking me? Where does it want to grow? Where does it want to go? Do we want to talk? Do we just want to hold each other? Do we want to like make eye contact? Does it start getting more passionate? And then that keeps it kind of fresh.
Yeah. No, again, all of that is about maintaining it when you know that you need to maintain it. And
Yeah.
I'm always curious about why wouldn't that, if like I like chocolate, you like chocolate too. We both like chocolate. So I do not need reminders to eat chocolate. If anything, I need reminders not to eat as much chocolate as I might eat if I left to my own devices. Do you know what I mean? I don't need reminders to do things that feel good. So what is it that
It
happens
is
in
a
a
funny thing,
couple?
isn't it?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. I think that a lot of it is, new relationship energy has so much projection. So we're kind of
Mhm.
idealizing our partner in terms
Yeah.
of what we think is being a man, my dream man or my dream woman is. And so we
Mhm.
start seeing each other through that. And we also present ourselves in best behavior,
Yeah.
right? So we dress up or whatever, we take a shower before a date, you know what I mean? And then when you live together, that's way too much energy to do 24/7, be on
You
best
actually want me creamed all the
behavior,
time? What if we're dating?
never fart in front of your buddy, your partner, like, so you kind of see each other less as a projection, number one, and second, more who we really are, including
Mhm.
the less likable maybe sides of each
Yeah.
other.
Actual
Uh,
disillusionment, literal, I mean, without even a negative connotation per se.
Mm, mm.
Our illusions are replaced by reality, and it turns
exactly,
out that we're actually real people, it turns out.
Right.
exactly,
So
exactly.
well, you don't, but I have flaws. So
Exactly.
it actually turns out I have flaws. I haven't found any of hers yet, but
Right.
we're newlyweds. We've only been married for what, 20, almost 22 years. So,
Right.
I haven't found any of her flaws yet, but she's well aware of mine. And that disillusionment process, yeah, is certainly a stage everybody has to go through.
Right. And then you add the, so-called realities of life, whether it's kids and mortgage and late hours of work. And so you're starting now to get into a routine and having all kinds of needs that are not met by the other person.
Mhm.
So one of you wants to go more on walks in nature and the other one more wants to go more to gourmet restaurants. And so every time you decide gourmet restaurant or non-gourmet restaurant, it's a negotiation. Go on a
Mhm.
walk or go whatever, that's a negotiation. So I think a lot more negotiation happens in those areas where your tastes and preferences are different. And it also, I think, leads. And then you can figure out, well, if I was just with a person who only liked gourmet restaurants and would
Yeah.
never ever go to a restaurant where the dishes are less than $50 a dish, or whatever, you know what I mean? So I think there's also that aspect of it that people become more honest about their preferences.
Uh,
And
Negotiation isn't very sexy, the word itself. Do you know what
No,
I
exactly.
no,
mean?
it
It's
isn't, is
just
it?
not very sexy. And it is interesting, yeah, that the illusion one might have that, oh, I'll never have to negotiate with someone because we're always in perfect sync. And
Right. We're mirrors
we'll
of each
always
other.
want to go to the same restaurant, and that of
Yeah.
course is not realistic. But yeah,
Right.
people bump into that. One of my other, as I say, part of my pet theory is that it has also a lot to do, and I'm actually curious how this fits with the alchemy that you do,
Mm.
because a lot of what I claim is one of my basic tenets is that passion dies because people are afraid to say what they want, or afraid to know what they want, afraid to be intimate, in other words, afraid to actually be present and honest with each other, because it can be scary, especially sometimes it doesn't go well. The other person may be upset, or, not,
Right.
if I present myself as I am, will you still, love me or want me, or, it's a scary thing. So people gradually over time you walk on eggshells, basically. They eliminate more and more, and that itself becomes destabilizing. And I'm
Yeah.
curious because the practices you're describing, I know couples, and I'll bet you do too. I know couples for whom the idea of looking each other in the eye would be terrifying.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's that part of reestablishing or establishing intimacy is the willingness to be a little, not a little, be a lot anxious without crossing over
Absolutely.
into panic. Does that sort of fit? Do you run into that in your work?
Yes, absolutely. I think so. And I think that, one of the skill sets that we work with couples and with individuals too is how learning how to sit with the discomfort of those moments of
Yeah.
bringing up the things that I'm afraid of. In fact, I think that one of the most powerful things that we learned in doing this work in moments was that it's the things couples don't talk about that were often the absolute key to unlocking what was going on that was keeping
Yep.
them from real intimacy. And it was those, it wasn't what they were necessarily fighting about on the surface,
Yes.
it was what they weren't talking about. And
Uh-huh.
when we found that out, that became just such a powerful exercise and work to do with people. And things started really changing. It was like I can remember one of the couples was like, "Oh my God, he found that he could have his needs and he could let his wife know about them." And that then she actually felt more empowered. She had been the one with the social anxiety and real paralyzing social anxiety. And but it made her feel stronger to have him be vulnerable with her,
Hmm.
to let her know. And then that shifted everything in their relationship when they
Well, it
started that
shifted it
conversation.
because before we had worked with her individually for 3 months beforehand, and we were working with her in ketamine for a long time, and
Ah.
we're trained with ketamine. So we have like a 3 month ketamine program that she was in, and she was hyper anxious and couldn't speak without first thinking about what she'll say for an hour before she could say it, or sometimes a day.
Mm.
And she was in this program, and we call her the valedictorian of that particular cohort. And she could then, after that, she could speak. She could say her stories. She could, and her anxiety, she's still an introvert, but her core anxiety was gone, or at least
Hmm.
90-some% gone. And so now her husband no longer had to be in this space of, oh, I love my wife. She's so amazing. But at the same time, I'm always in caretaking mode of her. And now that she had that, and he came to our weekend relationship alchemy retreat based on what we had done for her, but because he's a research scientist, he thought we were too woo-woo. So he's like, okay, you guys are woo-woo, but I see the magic you did for my wife, so I'll come. And then he was wowed in the weekend, like, whoa.
Hmm.
But in that weekend, what Penny described happened is like he could now start seeing himself not in caretaking mode. And so
Hmm.
we were teaching them that you can express certain kinds of needs, whether they're sexual or sensual or relational. And he's like, I can, I'm allowed as a man. I'm not just the caretaker. I can also have my
Mm-hmm.
own needs and desires. And we said, yes. And so he started doing that. And then, as Penny said, that empowered her. She's no longer the one being taken care of. She now has the opportunity to be also a partner who's giving and not just
Hmm.
receiving.
Yeah.
And so that was a major shift for them.
And I think the other thing that happens is that when you get the power of the group is medicine with couples is we find is really powerful. That how often are you in a group where it's only couples and they're
Mm.
all coming because they want a better relationship? So all of a sudden you look at a couple and I can look at the two of you and think, oh, they're just perfect couple and they must get along so well and everything's great because we're not inside that couple and we're not in their secret moments of what's not happening, behind closed doors. And all of a sudden, that world opens up to you, and they can see, oh, they have that problem. Oh,
Hmm.
they feel this way too, and then they don't feel so broken or alone with what they're
Mm-hmm.
going on. And every single couple was like blown away by how empowered they felt by being with all these other couples and
Yeah, sure.
being able to share what was going on in a much deeper way.
Yeah,
I've
that's a
never
lot of
got,
what
yeah.
when when I work with a couple, one of the first things I say to almost every couple is just some reassurance that in effect they're not crazy. They're dealing with
Yeah.
things that are very common. You know, I'm
Exactly.
basically saying you're not crazy, evil, or stupid. That's why I start with the assumption. And only rarely in 30 plus years of doing this work have I encountered a couple where I don't say you're not crazy because one of them is. And I, you know, and I don't mean to make fun of serious mental health issues, but that, you know, that
Yeah,
does
yeah,
happen where somebody's
absolutely.
having a psychotic break, somebody's having a manic episode, something like that. Okay, oh, I see the problem here. You're nuts. But usually it isn't that. It's
Hmm.
hard because it's hard. You know, it's hard because normal people go through hard stuff.
Yeah.
And that is often, that itself is often very reassuring to people. They have told me.
And one of the core teachings, that's part of the story of us, one of the core teachings that we teach people is that they're on the same team, right?
Yeah.
And therefore, if they're having an argument about something and it feels like me against Penny, if we take the problem and say the problem is in front of us, and therefore
Mhm.
it's me and you trying to resolve this problem, and there's a Jewish teaching about compromises. There's two kinds of compromises. We call them cursed compromises and blessed compromises. The
Mhm.
cursed compromises are the one where you're trying to go 50-50.
Mhm.
There, you get half the time you win, half the time I win. That's cursed. That's not going for win-win. That's going for, I don't know, fairness or something silly like that, which there's a verse in the Bible that the Talmud says that's considered a cursed compromise. A fair compromise is a compromise where you're going for the win-win. How do we
Mhm.
get 80% each of what we're really looking for, maybe even more? And you do that by being on the same team opposite the challenge. I would like to have more night out. Penny would like to be more, actually with us, it's by the reverse, but she wants that. So it's not, yeah, 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 yeah. But instead it's
Mhm.
like, hey, let's be creative here. Let's really be, because the goal of love is to support each other's flourishing,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, that's you're familiar with narrative therapy? That's
Hmm.
Michael White's thing, may he rest in peace. That it was all about the people are not the problem is the problem. You get the
Right.
problem out, you externalize the problem. That's one of their
Externalize the
Exactly.
tips.
problem, exactly.
Yeah.
And so we
And
teach
then
that.
yeah.
Yeah. And that's part of the story of us, that there's or something we once coined the word mwe, spelled MWE, which is a mashup of me and we.
Ah,
Two
yeah.
me's and a we.
Two me's and a
Uh-huh.
we. And I like about it, visually, I can tell you a lot about interesting things about, but one of them is that M and a W are mirror images of each other. So it's
Indeed.
basically like if you think of it like this, here was an M on top and a W on the bottom, it kind of makes an infinity circle between them. But
Ah.
it's really about, having a we and not just two me's, but
Mhm.
not having only a me without only a we without the two me's.
Mm-hmm.
So
You're
how do
sounding
we
like Hillel now, right?
exactly, exactly. So
Mili,
and then the Emilio Shani
Yeah.
money, right? So yeah, so so by having them go back, and we have a couple we worked with for a long time, and they're going through challenges. He's unemployed and he's having some depression challenges and things like that. And his wife was actually here this last weekend in the ceremony with us. She said, it used to be beforehand that we were at each other's throat. Now we have problems, but we know we're in us. We know
Yeah.
that.
Yes.
And because we're in us, yes, there's some financial challenges. He's trying to establish his own business. Yes, he's dealing with depression, whatever it is, but we're a team,
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah,
And that makes all the difference. Those are her words. That makes
sure
all the difference.
does.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
And that's really
So
for teaching. Yeah.
how can people get in touch with you and, if they want to make use of what you do?
We have our main website is michaelandpenny.com. And Penny once asked me, she says, I'm the geek. I'm like very high-end geek since I was little, right? So Penny's one day, that's a bit sexist. Why is Michael first? Actually, she told me this like 2 months ago. And I'm like, okay, let me see if pennyandmichael.com also exists. And it did. It's still available. So I bought pennyandmichael.com and it maps to Michael and Penny. So
There you
regardless
go.
that people remember Michael first or Penny first, michaelandpenny.com. And the other thing is, you asked about connection and it'll lead to a website. One of the practices we a while ago, I'm a geek amongst other things and high tech person, and I'm like, a lot of people say, oh, we can't go on a date because then it would be 3 hours and a budget and a babysitter and a this and a that, and I'm too tired. So he said, well, what if we created 10-minute dates?
Uh-huh.
So, and what if we made them custom made? So rather than invent 1,000 different dates and maybe index cards for it, I wrote an app that basically asks you a series of questions.
Ah,
How is your relationship doing? How long have you been together? Some of it multiple choice, some of it text that you answer the question. And it's an app, and the URL of it is 10minutedate.com, 10 spelled 10. So 10minutedate.com. And it's an app. And you go there and it takes all your answers. It sends it off to an AI, it sends it off to Claude. Claude has been trained in our methodology, and it then pops back based on what kind of date you wanted, where your relationship is, what you wrote. It
Oh,
then pops out a custom
clever.
date for you.
wow.
And
That's
Penny
very
and I
clever.
do that a
We
lot.
do them periodically because it's just
Uh-huh.
fun.
So what,
And
what would be
everybody
an
has
idea of a
10 minutes.
10-minute date?
Yeah, because most people think, well, 10 minutes, what can you do in 10 minutes?
Well, so for a
Yeah.
10-minute date, one night we decided that we felt like being silly. So it had us telling jokes to each other and just holding each other and laughing, and we just like dissolved into hysterics for
Or we
10
played,
minutes,
or we
you know.
played tag around the house, but you always had to be going backwards, right? So things that make you laugh.
Or you
Or
can say that, you know, you're looking for a little more physical contact. So it has you hugging and doing eye gazing or doing something like that. So it varies depending on the mood that you're in and what you put into it, which is really fun. So
and you
we
can
just
tell
do
it
it.
you want spy-like adventures, and it'll say, okay, take a drawer you haven't cleaned in 10 years, and then make up stories about all the things you found in there, how it came from
Uh-huh.
an archaeological dig or whatever. Just so that website is at 10minutedate.com, 10minutedate.com, and you can get to it also from microandpenny.com.
We
Sounds like a
will
lot of fun.
we'll put those in the notes. Thank you so much for doing this.
Uh-huh.
Well, thank
Thank
you for
you.
being with us, and we love hearing you, and I'm sure you enjoyed hopefully what we had to say.
Yeah, it's really
Indeed.
special for us too to have another couple
Yeah.
interviewing us,
Yes, we
and
don't
Yeah.
it's
often
really
get
nice.
couples,
It's
so
really nice.
nice to have
Couples,
you.
taking care of couples and
Yeah.
being with couples is nice.
Yeah.
Great.
Welcome back. We hope you enjoyed meeting Penny and Michael. I know we did.
We did indeed. That was really a lot of fun. So again, if you want to get in touch with us, Judy, tell folks the website.
Okay, that would be CT, like couples therapy, NIN, the number 7, ctin7.com. And you can find information about all our books, previous podcasts, how to get in hold of Bruce if you want to work with him. He's a pretty darn good couples therapist.
So I'm told.
And that's what I hear. And plus all his video courses that are available, all his books, and his books also, just like mine, are available in paperback, Kindle, and audio versions.
And so until next time,
Remember, be kind
don't panic.
and have faith.